Assalamualaikum and good morning to Shamin. My name is Nur Fatah binti Muhammad Effendi, and today I want to present about special science. So this is my mind map about this topic. So special science have specialized sense organs that gather sensory information and change it into nerve impulse. Special sense include vision by eyes, hearing by ear, taste by tongue, touch by skin, and smelling by nose. So first of all, let's take a look at sight or vision sense by eyes. So eyes have the ability to see objects surrounding, and it also have the ability to perceive color, brightness, and darks. So human eyes is enclosed within the eye sockets in the skull and is anchored down by muscles with the sockets. So eyes are very sensitive to light image. Human eyes can be compared to the camera as both works by gathering, focusing, and transmitting the light through the lens for creating an image of an object. So this is the structure of the eyes. Eyes is roughly spherical and about an inch in diameter. In the front, the cornea and lens focus light reflected from objects in the world onto the retina in the back of the eyes. So here, lens change its shape to allow us to see both near and far objects clearly. So there, for eyes, it has two structure, which is external structure and internal structure. For external structure, it consists of sclera, conjunctiva, cornea, iris, and pupil, while internal structure consists of lens, retina, optic nerve, aqueous humor, and vitreous humor. Sclera is a white visible portion and is made up of dense connective tissue to protect inner parts. Conjunctiva, it lines the sclera made up of stratified squamous epithelium, and it keeps eyes moist and clear and provides lubrication by splitting mucus and tears. For cornea, it is also transparent anterior part of the eyes, and it covers the pupil and iris. The functions of cornea is to refract the light along with the lens. Next, iris. Iris is pigmented and colored portion of the eyes. And it is visible externally. The function of iris is to control the diameter of pupil according to the light. And the last one is pupil. Pupil is a small aperture located in the center of the iris, and it allows light to enter and focus on the retina. So next, internal structure. For lens is a transparent convex and lens of an eye. The lens is attached to the cleary body by ligaments. The lens, along with the cornea, reflects light so that it focuses on the retina. Retina is the innermost layer of the eyes. It is light sensitive and acts as a film of a camera. It has three layers of neural cells, which is ganglion, bipolar, and photoreceptor cells, and it converts the image into electrical nerve impulses for the visual perception by the brain. So, like I said, it has photoreceptor cells, and under photoreceptor cells, it has two parts, which is roots and cones. So roots, these sensors function in low light and are found at the edges of the retina, and it aids in peripheral vision. While for cones work best in bright light and detecting fine details and in color, which is red, blue, and green. Usually, people who have color blindness has a problem which they don't have one of these three colors. Uh, Nevertheless, for red, blue, or even green. Even one of these colors are absent, the person will be color blindness person. So For vision sense, it have three common vision problems, which is myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism. For myopia is the technical term for nearsightedness, meaning that you can see clearly up close but distant objects are blurred. And this happens when the eyeball itself is too long, or else when the cornea, which is the clear front part of the eyes, is too curved. And that additional curvature of or length causes light to focus in front of the retina instead of on it, which makes the resulting image look fuzzy. The way glasses or contacts myopia is by compensating for this area to extend the light's focus onto the retina where it belongs. So these lenses are concave, which is thinner in the middle, and always have negative uh, prescription. So next for hyperopia. Hyperopia, better known as farsightedness, means that you can see distant objects clearly, but everything up close is blurry. Hyperopia happens for the opposite reasons that myopia does. So instead of being too long, the eyeball is too short, or else the cornea is too flat. This causes light to focus behind the retina, making near images fuzzy. In order to correct hyperopia, corrective lens must be convex, which is thicker in the middle, and have a positive prescription. So the larger the number, the stronger the prescription. And the last one, astigmatism. The third common refractive error people experience is astigmatism, and it is a little different from the other two problems. A normal cornea is uniformly curved so that there is a single focal point. For astigmatism, the cornea is more football shaped, so it creating multiple focal points, which makes things appear blurry at any distance and bends their image. Astigmatism is often paired with one of the other refractive errors, and it requires a more complex sense to correct than they do. Typically, the lens will be somewhat cylindrical rather than spherical. So that's for sight or vision sense. So hearing is a mechanical science, and it turns physical movement into the electrical signals that make up the language of the brain, translating these vibrations into what we experience as the world of sounds. The diversity of sounds we can hear typically range from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. And the sound we hear represent a richly layered mix of frequencies and amplitudes. It's fully transmitted through a finely engineered apparatus. So the ear can be classified into three parts, which is outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. So let's take a look at the structure of the ear. So first we look at the outer ear. So in humans, the auricle is an almost rudimentary, usually in mobile shell, and that lies close to the side of the head. It consists of a thin plate of a yellow elastic cartilage covered by closely adherent skin. So the cartilage is molded into clearly defined hollows, ridges, and furrows that form an irregular shallow funnel. So here, the concha is the deepest depression that leads straight to the external auditory canal. Helix. The helix arises from the floor of the concha and continues as the incurred ring of the upper portion of the auricle. The antihelix surrounds the concha and it is separated from the helix by furrow the scapa and also called as the fossa of the helix. For the external auditory canal, it is a slightly curved tube that extends inward from the floor of the concha and ends blindly at the tympanic membrane. The canals outside is made of cartilage, while the interior are made of bone. So the entire length of the passage, around 24 millimeters, is lined with the skin, which also covers the outer surface of the tympanic membrane. Here, the external acoustic meatus, are also called as ear canal, is a sigmoid shaped tube that extends from the deep part of the trachea to the eardrum, or also called as tympanic membrane. The walls of the external is 1/3 are formed by cartilage, whereas the inner 2/3 are formed by the temporal bone. It does not have a straight path and instead travels in an almost S-shaped curve as it initially travels in a super-anterior direction, then turns slightly to move super or posteriorly, and it ends by running in an interior anterior direction. So the tympanic membrane, which is the eardrum, it lies at the distal end of the external acoustic membrane, and it is a thin semi-transparent which form the boundary between the outer and middle ear. It is stretched obliquely across the end of the external canal. Its outer surface is slightly concave. The edge of the membrane is thickened and attached to a groove in an incomplete ring of the bone. So the tympanic annulus, which holds it in place. So the appearance and mobility of the eardrum are so important for the diagnosis of middle ear disease. And this membrane is well supplied with blood vessels and sensory nerve fibers that make it acutely sensitive to pain. Next, we move to the middle ear. So the outer ear function is to capture and direct sound wave to the middle ear. So for middle ear lies within the temporal bone, extends from tympanic membrane, which is the eardrum, to the lateral wall of the inner ear. The functions of middle ear actually to transmit vibrations from the tympanic membrane to the inner ear via auditory ossicles. So we can see the tympanic cavity. So tympanic cavity is located medially to the tympanic membrane. It contains three tiny bones known as the auditory ossicles, which is the malleus, incus, and stapes. They use the middle ear to transfer sound waves. They are connected in a chain-like chain-like manner, linking the tympanic membrane to the oval window of the interior ear. So here we look at the three bones, which is malleus, incus, and stape. For malleus is the large and most lateral of the ear bones, and it consists of a head and a hammer. It joins tightly with the body of the incus, while the hammer, or also called as a handle, is firmly attached to the tympanic membrane from the center to the upper margin. So for incus body is articulates with the malleus, and it also have a short limb and long limb. Short limb attached to the posterior wall of the middle, while long limb joins the stapes. The stapes, which is also the smallest bones in the body, it is about 3 meter long and weighs scarcely about 3 milligrams. It lies almost horizontally at right angles to the process of the incus. Its base fits nicely in the oval window and is surrounded by the elastic annual ligament. So here we can also see the eustachian tube. Eustachian tube, are also called as auditory tube, is a cartilaginous and bony tube that connects the middle ear to the nasopharynx. It acts to equalize the pressure of the middle ear to that of the external auditory meatus on both sides of the tympanic membrane. It is about 31 to 38 millimeter long, leads downward and inward from the tympanum to the nasopharynx, which is the space that is behind and continuous with the nasal passage, and it's above the soft palate. So that's for middle ear. So now we move to the inner ear. Inner ear function is to maintain balance and convert mechanical signals into electrical signals. Inner ears, of course, is the innermost part of the ear and houses the vestibulocochlear organs. It has two components actually, which is the bony labyrinth and membranous labyrinth. Bony labyrinth consists of a series of bone cavities within the preterius part of the temporal bone, and it is composed of the cochlea, vestibule, three semicircular canals. All these structures are lines internally with periosteum and contained in a fluid called perilymph. While for membranous labyrinth, it consists of the cochlear duct, semicular ducts, utricle, and saccule, and is fluid endolimbs. So in this picture, we can see the semicochlear canals. Semicochlear canals have a three semi, which is anterior, lateral, or posterior. And they contain semicircular ducts, which are responsible for balance. And each canal actually has an expanded end, which is the ampulla, which opens into the vestibule. For cochlea, cochlea houses the cochlear duct of the membranes and ladyburns. It twists open itself around a central portion of one called the medullus, producing a cone shape which points in an anterolateral direction. And the last one is vestibule. Vestibule is the central part of the bony labyrinth. It is separated from the middle ear by the oval window and communicates anteriorly with the cochlea and posteriorly with the semicochlear canals. Saccule and utricle are located within the vestibule. That's for the structure of the ear. So now how the sound enter the hearing system. So sound wave enter the hearing system through the outer ear, traveling down through the inch-long ear canal to strike the tympanic membrane or eardrum and making it vibrate. In the middle ear, the vibration are transmitted to three link bonds, and these ossicles, the smallest bonds in the body, magnify the motion of the eardrum some 20-fold. At their other end, the ossicles transmit their tiny movements to the cochlea, the organ of the inner ear, that actually translate the energy of sound wave into nerve signals. The cochlea is shaped like a spiral snail shell and contains fluid-filled canals. The vibration of the ossicles against a window at its base generates waves that ripple through this fluid, pushing against a membrane that is lined with thousands of tiny, about 1,000 of an inch long, hair cells, which is the receptors of the auditory system. So this movement opens tiny pores in the hair cells, allowing charged particles to enter and generating electric impulses that are picked up by nearby filaments of the auditory nerve, which carries to the brain. So the cochlea does translate sound wave into the language of the brain. So, but there is some controversy over just how. Some frequency of sound may be encoded by which hair cells respond. Cells at the base of the cochlea are moved by high-pitched sounds, while those that lie in the cochlea as it winds toward its apex response to the increasingly lower frequencies. So this explanation is called place theory. The rate theory, on the other hand, contends that some sounds, perhaps those at the low end of the frequency spectrum, are encoded by the rate of neuron activation. Within this range, higher pitch sounds stimulate neurons to fire more rapidly. Brain gets and sends this message. So signals from the ear carry the bare sensation of individual components of sound. And it is in the brain that we perceive sounds, become conscious of them, and interpret what they mean. The process begins as information from the cochlea travels through the olive and inferior cortex in the brainstem, then on up through other structures to the thalamus, a kind of central switching station for the sense. These lower brain centers coordinate signals from our two ears, allowing us to locate sounds and respond to sounds of danger, so we can take immediate action even without conscious thoughts. So, but most conscious perceptual processing occurs in the auditory cortex, a part of the brain's evolved outer layer that lies along the side of the head. In the temporal lobe, it appears that specific parts of the auditory cortex decode information from the cochlea about sound volume, rhythm, and pitch. So with connections to parts of the brain that store memories and regulate emotion. So there we understand and respond to what we hear. Next, we move to taste by tongues. So let's take a look at that. So tongue helps in perceiving various tastes and flavors. And the sense of taste triggers salivation and the secretion of gastric juice. So this is the structure of the tongues, which have sweet part, salty part, sour part, and bitter part. And on the tongue, we have a papilla, and on the papilla, it have a small bumps, which is we call it as taste bud on the top of the tongue, which allows the tongue to taste. So sense of smell and taste actually tend to work together. And if one could not smell something, so they cannot could not taste it either. So the sense of taste, also known as gustoception. So for the taste buds, the chemoreceptors in the nose would detect any kind of smell, whereas there are four types of taste buds. Each of it can detect diverse flavors such as sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. So human tongue is usually about 3.3 inch in men and 3.1 inch in women, and it is located in the oral cavity. So tongue is a muscular organ in the mouth covered with a moist and pink tissue, or we call it as mucosa. So the molecules that enter the system via taste buds is a pear-shaped structures in which a receptor-bearing cells surround a central point. So there are millions of receptors on some 10,000 of taste buds. When a molecule of the appropriate taste binds to a receptor, the process changes the electrical charge into the receptor cell. In its triggering release of a neurotransmitter. This messenger chemical initiates an electrical impulse in a nearby neuron, which carries the signal to the brain. It used to be thought that receptors for each taste were limited to one section of the tongue, which is the tip of the tongue for sweet, the sides for salt and sour, and the back for bitter. But now we know that receptor types are more widely distributed, which a single taste bud in fact may contain receptors for several tastes, and there is no clear organization of these receptors on the tongue. These signals go from the mouth via cranial nerves to the medulla oblongata in the brainstem, then up to the thalamus and on to the cortex, where the sensation becomes a perception. You just become aware of what you taste and can respond appropriately. Swallowing food and spitting out possibly harmful substances. So connections from the lower brain allow teeth to influence digestive processes directly. So this sense or tongue have several functions. So here I provide four functions of it, which is mastication, taste, speech, and deglutition. In mastication, tongue helps in chewing. In taste, of course, it transmits the taste signals to the brain and helps in sensing taste. In speech, tongue helps to facilitate speech, and in deglutition, it helps to swallowing a food. So that's for uh, taste sense with the tongue. So next we move to nose. Nose is an olfactory organ. So olfactory systems helps us to perceive different smells. Sense of smell also known as olfaction. So nose is able to smell around 80 different kinds of smell. And the molecules that activate the sense of smell is the airbornes. They enter the body through the nose and mouth and attach to the receptor cells that line the mucous membrane far back in the nose. So this is the structure of the nose. Nose is the opening containing nasal passage that allows outside air to flow into the nasal cavity. For nasal cavity, it is the cavity divided by nasal septum into left and right passages, and it is lined with mucosa. Here we can see olfactory bulbs. Olfactory bulbs is a bulb-shaped structures in the forebrain where olfactory nerve and the olfactory tract begins. So that is also cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. It is a porous extension of the ethmoid bone, which separates the nasal cavity from the brain. Olfactory nerve fibers extend through the holes in the um, cribriform to reach the olfactory bulbs. Olfactory nerve is the extent from mucous membrane through the cribriform plate to the olfactory bulbs. An olfactory tract is the band of nerve fibers that extend from each olfactory bulbs to the olfactory cortex of the brain. The unit of olfaction is its receptor, the dumps up of neurons. Each olfactory receptor cell has filaments called cilia with receptors designed to bind to specific molecules. The cell, like other neurons, also sends out a thicker fiber called an axon. The axons of olfactory nerve converge in the olfactory nerve and travel directly to the brain. In other terms, the olfactory nerve is made up of neurons, one of which is in direct touch with the outside environment and the other with the brain. So whenever a detectable molecule or odorant attacks to an olfactory receptor, it generates a tiny electrical impulse. The computation begins as signals are received and sorted out in the olfactory bulb and a structure on the underside of the front of the brain. So olfactory bulbs also connect directly to the limbic system, where the brain area that regulates emotions. How sense of smell works. So our sense of smell works by the detection of others. Olfactory epithelium located in the nose contains millions of chemical receptors that detect odors. When we sneeze, chemicals in the air are dissolved in mucus. Odor receptor neurons in olfactory epithelium detect these odors and send the signals onto the olfactory bulbs. These signals are then sent along olfactory tracts to the olfactory cortex of the brain through sensory transduction. The olfactory cortex is vital for the processing and perception of odor. It is located in the temporal lobe of the brain which is involved in organizing sensory input. The olfactory cortex is also a component of the limbic system, like I said just now. So this system is involved in the processing of our emotions, survival instinct, and memory formation. The olfactory cortex has connections with other limbic system structures, such as the amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus. So the amygdala is involved in forming emotional response, which is particularly fear response and memories. The hippocampus index and stores memories, while the hypothalamus regulates emotional responses. It is the limbic system that connects sense such as the others to our memories and emotions. So what is actually the connection of smell and emotions? So the connection between our sense of smell and emotion is unlike that of the other sense, because olfactory system have nerve connect directly to the brain structures of the limbic system. So others can trigger both positive and negative emotions, as aromas are associated with specific memories. Additionally, studies have demonstrated that the emotional expressions of others can influence our olfactory sense. So this is due to the activity of an area of the brain known as the piriform cortex, which is activated prior to other sensation. So the piriform cortex processes visual information and creates an expectations that a particular fragrance will smell pleasant and unpleasant. So therefore, when we see a person with a disgusted facial expression before sensing an odor, there is an expectation that the odor is unpleasant. So this expectation influence how we perceive the odor. So these are the two functions, sense of smell, which is we can find foods and appreciating flavor. Actually, a nose also have other functions also. This helps in inhalation and purification of inhaled air. So the process of respiration starts in the nose. So the oxygen enters into the nose through the nostrils and exits the same way during exhalation. The nasal cavities open into a space called choana, which further opens in the nasopharynx. So the air then enters the oropharynx and finally reach the lungs via larynx, trachea, and bronchi. In terms of purification of inhaled air, so nose can conditions the air by filtering, warming, and moisturizing the air. That's about smell sense by the nose. So now let's take a look at touch sense by skin. So skin actually is the heaviest organ of the human body with weight around 4.5 kilogram. So skin is the largest organ of our body and is related to the sense of touch, which also refers as tactile reflection. So skin contains general receptors which can detect touch, pain, pressure, and temperature. And skin receptors generate an impulse, and when activated, it is carried to the spinal cord and then to the brain. So, and it has a fleshy surface with hair, nerve, glands, and nails, and it also consists of hair follicles, which anchor hair strands into the skin. Skin also have a different thickness and textures. And the color of skin can be determined by a pigment called melanin, which is synthesized in the epidermis, and it can vary from very pale to very dark skin. So let's take a look at the structure of the skin. So the structure of skin forms a protective layer, allows our body's and serve as the body's first line of defense against toxic substances or foreign particles. And it consists of three major layers, which is epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. So epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin, and cells in these layers are called keratinocytes, which is composed of keratin. And it strengthens the skin and makes it waterproof. So in epidermis, it has another three types, which is stratum corneum, spinous and granular layer, and also basal layer. For stratum corneum, it is the outermost layer of the epidermis, and it consists of that and uniform scale-like cells which are overlapped. And it also contains abundant keratin and provide rigidity to the skin. For spinous and granular skin layer, it is vary in their shapes and sizes. These abnormalities give rise to the spinous layer, which the cells pass through before reaching the granular layer. The cell has begun to shrivel and die as a result of being far away from the blood supply. And the last one is basal layer. Basal layer is beneath all other layer of the epidermis, where new cells are produced continuously. Cells get an upward thrust by the continuous formation of new cells. Next, we move to dermis. So dermis consists of papillae, which form finger-like projections, and it constitutes of fat, fibers, and collagen, which makes the skin flexible and strong. And it also consists of blood vessels, which supply blood for the formation of new cells. Dermis acts as a lubricant and protects the skin by acting against the microbes. And it is vital in regulating body temperature. Nerves in the dermis are sensitive to environmental factors such as pressure and temperature, and it also contains the hair follicles and sebaceous oil gland, which are produced as sebum. The next one is hypodermis. Hypodermis is made up of fat and forms in the innermost layer, and its thickness dependent on the region where they appear and vary. Such as example, the skin area around the eyes is comparative the inner for the easy movement of the eyes. So fat store provides energy and crucial in reacting to ambient temperature, and it insulates the body from heat and cold. It also cushions the internal organs, muscle, and bones, and protects from any injuries. Next, the information about the structure of skin. So here, next we move to the functions of skin. So functions of skins are, I have three types of functions, which is sensation, thermoregulation, and storage. For sensation, skin is the main sense of the organ that can sense of touch, heat, pressure, cold, pain, and pleasure. And it is a network of nerve transmits these signals to the brain. For thermoregulation, by the skin through the sweat glands and blood vessels in the dermis. Like I said just now, blood vessels in the dermis are so sensitive. So increased evaporation of the secreted sweat decrease the body temperature. Vasodilation, which is the relaxing of small blood vessels in the dermis, makes it easier for the body to release some heat and lower the body temperature through skin. In vasoconstriction, which is the contracting small blood vessels, the dermis retains some of the internal blood temperature. The fatty subcutaneous layer of the skin also acts as an insulation barrier, helping to prevent the loss of heat from the body and decreasing the effect of cold temperature. And the last one is storage. It helps to store fat and water in its tissue. So it provides extra insulation to our body. Here I have an extra information about sensation. So sensation is detected through the nerve endings in the dermis, which are easily affected by wounds. So sensation in the skin plays a role in helping to protect us from burn wounds, such as when we get wounds from fire. So sensation skin can protect us from one or and second degree burns, but in case of 3 degree of burns, it is less effective as our skin did not feel any pain due to the fact that the nerve endings in the skin are destroyed by the fire. So that's all about my presentation today about special sense. So thank you for hearing, and that's all from me. Thank you.